Hello fellow gardeners and welcome back to Soilsage Chronicles. As we step into June, your garden is likely experiencing its first real surge of summer energy. The soil is warming, plants are establishing their rhythm, and if you're like me, you're probably standing in your garden each morning with that familiar mix of excitement and slight overwhelm. June is that magical month where everything seems to happen at once, and that's exactly why I'm sharing these 10 essential garden hacks that will help you navigate this crucial growing period with confidence. Whether you're tending to your first garden or you've been cultivating for decades, June presents unique opportunities and challenges that can make or break your growing season. These aren't just random tips I've collected over the years, they're battle-tested strategies that have saved my garden more times than I can count, and I know they'll transform yours too. One of the biggest mistakes I see gardeners make in June is falling into the trap of frequent shallow watering. Here's the thing. When temperatures start climbing and growth accelerates, your plants need water that penetrates deep into the soil, not just surface moisture that evaporates within hours. I've learned to water less frequently, but for longer periods, typically every 2 to 3 days rather than daily sprinkles. When I water, I make sure the moisture reaches at least 6 inches down into the soil. You can test this by inserting a long screwdriver or wooden dowel into the ground after watering. It should slide in easily through moist soil and meet resistance only when it hits dry earth. The key is understanding that deep watering encourages roots to grow downward, creating stronger, more drought-resistant plants. Shallow watering does the opposite, keeping roots near the surface where they're vulnerable to heat stress. This approach has dramatically reduced my watering frequency while keeping my plants healthier and more resilient. If I could give you just one piece of advice for June, it would be to mulch everything. Seriously, everything. Mulching is like giving your garden a protective blanket that regulates soil temperature, retains moisture, and suppresses weeds all at once. I prefer organic mulches like shredded leaves, grass clippings, or wood chips, applied in a 3 to 4 inch layer around plants. The trick is keeping the mulch about 2 inches away from plant stems to prevent moisture-related diseases and pest problems. I've seen too many gardens struggle with fungal issues because mulch was piled directly against plant bases. What many gardeners don't realize is that mulch also feeds your soil as it decomposes, creating a continuous cycle of soil improvement. I've noticed that areas of my garden with consistent mulching have richer, more fertile soil and require less frequent watering and fertilizing over time. June is prime time for succession planting, especially for quick-growing crops like lettuce, radishes, beans, and herbs. Instead of planting everything at once and facing a glut followed by empty beds, I plant small amounts every 2 weeks throughout the growing season. This approach ensures I have fresh harvests continuously rather than, an overwhelming abundance followed by nothing. For example, I plant a new row of lettuce every 2 weeks, which means I'm harvesting mature heads while younger plants are still developing. This strategy has really revolutionized how I approach food gardening, and honestly, it's eliminated the feast or famine cycle that plagued my early gardening years. The key is keeping detailed records of what you plant and when. I use a simple garden journal where I note planting dates, varieties, and expected harvest times. This planning tool has become, invaluable for maintaining consistent productivity throughout the season. June is when pest pressure really begins to build, making companion planting strategies essential. I've learned that certain plant combinations naturally repel pests, improve soil health, and even enhance flavor in neighboring crops. One of my favorite combinations is planting basil near tomatoes. The basil helps repel aphids and whiteflies while potentially improving tomato flavor. Marigolds scattered throughout the garden create a natural barrier against many common pests, while also attracting beneficial insects that prey on garden troublemakers. I also plant nasturtiums as trap crops near my squash and cucumber plants. These colorful flowers attract cucumber beetles and squash bugs, drawing them away from my main crops. Nasturtiums can actually handle a bit of pest pressure, and their flowers make tasty edible additions to salads. A lot of gardeners, well, they either over-fertilize or under-fertilize in June, and honestly, both can cause problems. I've learned that timing fertilizer applications to match the plant growth stages is really crucial for getting the best results without waste or stressing your plants. For most vegetables, I like to apply a balanced fertilizer when the plants are actively growing, but before they start flowering or fruiting. Applying nitrogen-heavy fertilizers too late in the season, well, that can actually promote excessive leaf growth at the expense of fruit production. I've seen this happen with tomatoes that grow into beautiful lush plants, but, well, end up producing very few tomatoes. Slow-release fertilizers work particularly well in June because they provide steady nutrition throughout the growing season, without the risk of burning plants during hot weather. Personally, I prefer organic options like compost worm castings or fish emulsion, since these feed both the plants and the soil microorganisms. June is really crucial for pruning and training decisions that will impact your harvest for the rest of the season. For tomatoes, I remove suckers, that's those shoots that grow between the main stem and branches, to focus the plant's energy on fruit production rather than, excessive foliage. I also prune the lower branches of tomato plants to improve air circulation and reduce disease pressure. This practice has significantly reduced blight problems in my garden, especially during humid summer months. For vining crops like cucumbers and squash, I train them onto trellises or supports to save space and improve air circulation. Vertical growing not only maximizes garden space but also makes harvesting easier and reduces pest problems by keeping fruits off the ground. Understanding soil temperature is honestly a game changer for June gardening success. I use soil thermometers to monitor temperature at different depths, and that really helps me make better decisions about planting, watering, and mulching. Warm season crops like peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes really thrive when soil temperatures are consistently above 65 degrees, while cool season crops prefer temperatures between 45 and 65 degrees. I've learned over the years to create microclimates in my garden using mulch, shade cloth, and some strategic planting to accommodate different temperature preferences. For example, I plant heat-loving crops in areas that receive full sun and have dark mulch to absorb heat, while I use light-colored mulch and provide afternoon shade for cool season crops I want to extend into summer. If you're growing in containers, June requires special attention to watering and heat management. Container plants dry out much faster than ground plants, especially during hot weather. I've learned to group containers together to create humidity microclimates and use saucers to catch excess water for plants to reabsorb. Adding water-retaining crystals to potting soil has been a game changer for my container gardens. These crystals absorb water when it's abundant and release it slowly as plants need it, reducing watering frequency and preventing both drought stress and overwatering. I also use light-colored containers when possible, as dark containers absorb more heat and can literally cook plant roots during hot weather. If I must use dark containers, I place them inside larger, light-colored pots, or wrap them in light-colored materials. June is perfect for establishing beneficial insect habitats that will protect your garden throughout the growing season. I've learned that a diverse ecosystem with good bugs is far more effective than any pesticide spray for long-term pest control. I plant flowers like Alyssum calendula and cosmos throughout my garden to provide nectar sources for beneficial insects. I also leave some areas wild with native plants and undisturbed soil where beneficial insects can overwinter and reproduce. Creating simple bee hotels using bamboo tubes or drilled wooden blocks provides nesting sites for solitary bees, which are excellent pollinators for fruit and vegetable crops. These small habitat improvements have dramatically increased beneficial insect populations in my garden. June's warm, humid conditions can trigger disease problems that will plague your garden all season if not addressed early. I've learned that prevention is always easier than treatment when it comes to plant diseases. I practice strict garden hygiene by removing any diseased plant material immediately and disposing of it in the trash rather than composting. I also avoid overhead watering late in the day, which can leave foliage wet overnight and create perfect conditions for fungal diseases. Crop rotation is another crucial disease prevention strategy I implement religiously. I never plant the same family of crops in the same location 2 years in a row, which helps break disease cycles and prevents soil-borne pathogens from building up. You know, these 10 June garden hacks really do represent years of learning, experimenting, and well, sometimes failing in my own garden. Each strategy has earned its place through proven results and the peace of mind that comes from working with nature rather than against it. Remember, gardening is a journey of continuous learning and every season brings new discoveries. What works perfectly in my garden might need a bit of adjustment in yours, depending on your climate, soil, and specific conditions. So the key is to start with these proven strategies and, adapt them to your unique situation. I'd love to hear about your own June gardening experiences and, any additional hacks you've discovered. Your fellow Soilsage Chronicles. Community members and I are always eager to learn from each other's successes and challenges. Don't forget to subscribe to Soilsage Chronicles for more seasonal gardening wisdom. And hey, share this article with your fellow gardeners who could benefit from these June strategies. Together, we're cultivating not just better gardens, but a community of gardeners who support each other in growing amazing things. Happy gardening, and here's to your most abundant season yet.